Catherine Gagnon is a master transformational coach and practitioner. She has an amazing story how she, left nurse practicing, left being a nurse practitioner and moved to this transformation coach where she helps people in so many areas. She has defeated Lyme's disease, and she has a protocol that helps people with it. She is an empath, so she feels people's and kind of visualize their what she calls energy leaks. Fascinating discussion with Catherine. I really enjoyed it. You're gonna like it too. She's also a hang gliding coach. Just a fascinating woman. Wait till you hear of some of the anecdotes that she has about, before loving others, loving yourself. The parable of the white and the black wolf, and just a fascinating discussion with Catherine Gagnon. She's from originally from Montreal, so she pronounces it a bit different, but she's got great content. I'll put it in the show notes in English and also in French. But just a great conversation with Catherine. You're going to love it. Thanks so much for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business? And it lasted over 25 years. Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Really enjoyed learning about you, and I have lots of questions. So nice to meet you. Thank you for your time today, Catherine. Bonjour. So, tell me your process and how you hear, see, and feel energy leaks.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Joe. Thank you for this question and thank you for having me today. I'm really, really honored to be on this show with you. So, I think from the longest time that I remember, I was very sensitive to energies. I would go into a room, even if people were gone, and if there had been some fighting or love, I could feel that. And so when I was in contact with people, I didn't know, I was receiving a lot of information, but I didn't know how to interpret that. And so with a lot of training, I was able to harness this gift of seeing the subtle physiological changes when somebody is going through something, hearing in their language their energy leaks. And sometimes it's just the way that they're using their language. If they're saying, oh, this is killing me, or this is, I can't deal with this, or, oh, it's never going to be this way or that way, and these are things that really constrict people's energy. And then I can feel that. I can feel their energy as being either expanded or contracted. And you can probably relate, Joe, from having been in contact with so many people, that if you get next to a person and their vibe is expanded, it's good, it's together, it's whole, versus somebody whose their vibe is constricted and they're not so well in their inner peace, and perhaps they're wearing a mask trying to pretend that things are okay, which a lot of us do, but inside it's like they're feeling like they're dying, or something is not right about them, or they're afraid of something. So it's all these subtle things that put together gives me a lot of information, and I've learned to trust that, because believe me, I came from the world of medicine where everything has to be evidence-based and you have to prove what you're saying. So when I became a health coach, transformational health coach, I had to really trust in that intuition and sometimes just checking in with the person and saying, I'm picking on this. You tell me if that's out of the left field. And most times people are like, oh my gosh, yes. So it's kind of the intangible put into the tangible. I hope that makes sense. But yeah, it's
Very
been
interesting.
quite useful.
Do you consider yourself an empath?
Totally. Oh my gosh. Yes. Yes. And, as a lot of empath will say, before they were aware of this,
Mm,
you know, um, we can pick up on people's energies and all of a sudden, feel sad or anxious
mm,
but it doesn't belong to us. So learning to differentiate that is key and to harness that gift in such a way that it works with me and with the person and not against me, so oftentimes when I was younger, especially as a teenager, you want to fit in, you want to
mm.
belong with the gang and all that. And I'd be in a conversation with somebody and I could sense the energy shift. And maybe it was just the person thinking about something, but I used to think, oh, it's me, something's wrong with me, I'm not being interesting, or the person is seeing something and I don't want them to see that. So for the longest time, this gift was not working for me, but it was working against me and it was actually leaking my energy until I learned to use it to my, to my advantage.
Yeah, I've had the great fortune of speaking to other empaths. I don't understand how you can stop the negative or perhaps even positive energy affecting you. Why doesn't it change your mood as well? Or does it? Or you say it's somebody else's, but it has to affect you as well. Are you able to completely keep it outside of your body?
That is the work of a lot of inner awareness to be able to differentiate what is mine, what is theirs.
Mm,
But I find that, we are all, we're a vibration. Quantum physics is showing us that we're all vibrational beings, and we, wherever we focus our attention, energy goes. Where attention flows, and we expand what we're looking at. So, um, in the world of the inner journey of knowing thyself, I
mm,
find that is where I've been able to pick up on reading myself first. Let's say I go to meet somebody, or before I'm getting on a call with a client or an interview with the podcast, I'll do a quick scan of what's mine. What do I feel in my body? What do I feel in my emotions? What is mine? And what do I know to be true about myself? So that if I pick up on certain things from the other person or just kind of being in the vibe of the environment, I can decipher what's mine and what's not mine. And I find that a lot of people who are sensitive and have not learned to have this discernment and this self-awareness, they get very tired from being with other people because they're constantly getting this
mm.
energy back and forth, and they have to process it physically, vibrationally, on top of mentally, of like, what's going on, is this me, is this that? So yeah, yeah, it's a journey of awareness, that's for sure, and mastery, self mastery through discipline.
Through discipline, very good, a great theme. And and yeah, because I've always wondered, and I always ask this when I speak of empaths: what happens when you're in a subway car in New York City, or you're in a concert with thousands of people, and you have all this collision of emotions happening? How do you pull yourself away from it?
And well, here's the thing, if you're stuck on a subway, you can't pull yourself away from
Right.
it. And I used to feel that on the subway in Montreal, when I was studying in Montreal and working there. And I don't live in a city anymore, but if I go to a city and if I go to a place where I'm crowded, with other people, what I find is, instead of absorbing the energies from the outside in, I raise my vibration through some breathing, cardiac coherence, diaphragmatic breathing, so I can really just slow down my own mind, raise my own vibe, so I can radiate that outside. And whatever vibe I would pick up from somebody, let's say that I find the vibe is maybe worried or anxious or negative, or um, I just try to radiate out positive vibes and just say, sending blessings to you, sending blessings to you, and so I'm going from the inside out instead of outside in, if that makes sense. And I can preserve my own energy while hopefully, making some positive impact. Who knows?
Hmm. You mentioned in high schools when you kind of first noticed it. Did you notice it as a younger child? Did your parents have it? Did your siblings have it?
I don't have any siblings, so that was kind of complicated because I had nobody to kind of have a sounding board with. And if I've been learning about HSP, hypersensitive people, which
Hmm.
is about 20% of the population. So it's 1 in 5 people. And I remember being young and having some, I don't know if it was intuitions, or I would pick up on certain things and I'd go to my parents and say, "Hey, I feel this is happening, that is happening." And bless their heart, they wanted to protect me, and they would say, "Oh, no, 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 that's not what it is. Oh, no, 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 that's not what it is." So in a way, it kind of crossed my wires that I couldn't trust my own intuition. Um,
Hmm.
and I always felt a little bit like the outsider. I mean, I had friends, but I always felt a little bit different. So it took me a long time to find a tribe of like minded people who were actually understanding this and experiencing this. And HSP are known to process things on a deeper level, so it takes longer to process things, and when I learned that, I was like so relieved, like, oh my gosh, I'm not crazy.
Mm.
You know? Yeah. Yeah. But when you're young, it's, and especially nowadays, I see some young people that are sensitive like me, but they don't know it. And with the world of social media, I mean, I was born in 1980. That just gives you my age, but
Mm.
I'm so grateful that when I went through elementary school and high school, there was no social media.
Mm.
Because if you were being bullied at school, you would get home and it was over. But nowadays, young people have to deal with this chronic kind of pressure on them 24/7. And for somebody who's sensitive, hypersensitive, it might feel very, very overwhelming when they don't know how to self regulate and master their own emotional energy, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a terrible burden to kind of separate themselves from that. Can people with HSP notice others with HSP?
Yes. And when you start noticing others, and it's like, oh my God, where have you been all my life?
Wow.
It's an
So you'll be in
instant
a
recognition.
a store or somewhere in public, and you'll see, and your eyes will meet, and you both will know.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's been my experience. I mean, I've traveled the world. I wanted to touch all 5 continents by age 25, which, I didn't go to Europe like you at age 10, but hey, I traveled the world by myself. And so there were countless meetings, Joe, of people where it was instant recognition. It's like we knew each other from, I don't know if it was past lifetimes, but
Wow.
in hindsight, all of these people that I had meaningful, deep connection with um, were empath and sensitive people. So there's kind of that recognition of kin. It's hard to describe.
Yeah, Ken, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me, and I just can't. It's so hard. I mean, I can kind of sense a person's by their nonverbal communicate. Right, I can kind of just tell their legs crossed, or they're not, or their voice lowered. I've been surrounded by a lot of foreign languages, so I don't need to hear the words. I can pretty much understand what they're saying, what their direction is, if they're whispering, if they're loud, if it's sharp, if it's soft. But other than those cues, I don't have this. Can you over video like this? Are you able to spot HSP as well?
Yes. Oh, totally. I would be, it takes just an interaction for
Mm.
sure. But I find that when I coach my clients, most of my work is through video and feeling, seeing, and hearing their energy leak, whether they're HSP or not. I mean, feeling, seeing, and hearing their energy leak is the bright side of the gift of being HSP. I find. and and I call it the energy leak. Somebody else might call it something else. But um, in the field of quantum physics of non-locality, even though we're separated by a certain distance physically, we are not, because I'm seeing you, and you know, I can tap into somebody's energy field, um, even through the computer like this. There's that principle of non-locality, where in the field somewhere we meet and we can feel each other's energy. I hope this is not too out there.
Love it.
for-
No, don't stop. I love it. Can,
yeah.
can, a, can a person shield themselves from you feeling their energy?
They could. They could shield themselves if I find that when somebody has, let's say, something they don't want other people to know,
Mm.
they will put up a shield. But honestly, oftentimes it makes it more obvious to me.
Hey.
But I won't be the person. I mean, I've seen some people with, you could call that psychic abilities, and they'll walk in the streets, and then they'll be going to somebody and just tell them what they see in their energy. I don't
Mm.
do that. That's very intrusive. That's like just walking to somebody and kissing them when they didn't ask for anything.
Right.
So, I would ask for permission. And of course, when I'm in a client relationship, that permission is there informally, for sure. But if somebody is shielding themselves, um, to me, their energy feels even more contracted, and yeah, it makes it even more obvious that something is happening.
It seems to me when you were a nurse practitioner, it was more science than art. And now what you practice is a bit more art than science. Do I have that right?
It sort of. I mean, it bridges and it combines together. But when I was a nurse practitioner, one of the things I love doing, I mean, I was known for making people cry.
Yeah, I saw
That's
that.
just, but what would happen is they would just come in my office. I'd ask them questions just to, get a sense of their symptoms and of what would the diagnosis be and all that. And then within 5 minutes, most of them would start crying, and then we'd start talking about the real stuff,
Hmm.
which oftentimes people would present with illnesses or dis-ease or malaise in a certain symptom or in a certain system for which there was an emotional um, neglect or trauma or abuse, or this is where psychosomatic illnesses are not well explained by science,
Hmm.
but more by mind-body connection applications, if you will. And so one of the things I used to struggle with as a nurse practitioner is that people would start telling me their life and the meaning of what this symptom was, and they would start healing right there. But I would struggle with the fact that, oh, I still got to take their blood pressure and examine them and write a
Right.
prescription and write my notes. So and what I'm doing now is really much bridging science and spirituality, which is what brings the art and the science together, I find, to really help the person expand and scale their full health potential physically, emotionally, relationship. I see health as something very global. So when I was practicing in medicine as a nurse practitioner, it was like a very limited
Hmm.
scope of looking at things, which was very unsatisfactory for me. And it was actually painful to be stuck in such a reductionist model,
Hmm.
which, it fits. It's a model. The medical model fits for certain things that it's so good at, surgeries, traumas, emergencies. I worked ER in Montreal when I started as a nurse. And I mean, when you got a broken leg, you don't want Reiki, you want the orthopedist.
Right.
But I was finding that there was so much in the mind body connection that were not addressed. And a lot of the so-called psychosomatic illnesses, everything functional like irritable bowel syndrome, fibromyalgia, anxiety, depression, we would treat without addressing the root cause,
Hmm.
which is multifactorial. And I've always had this global vision So I was like, how can I bring this global vision and pull on different modalities, just bring the best out of everything that's out there and that's been out there for a long time to really help a person in exactly the ways they need, to just live such a blissful life. So, yeah, sorry, long answer.
Well said. No, I love it, Catherine. Thank you. Now, if you're ever in a crowd, in a coffee shop, let's say, and you just feel the abundance of negative energy from a person, like they're going to commit a crime or they're going to do something harmful to themselves or somebody, is it incumbent upon you to do something? Is it so overwhelming that you can't stop yourself? What do you do? I'm sure you've had this situation, or maybe you haven't. What's that like?
Wow. Yes. Thank you for this question. Actually, I had this experience many times while traveling the world. And I have to say I had guardian angels because I would venture in the middle of nowhere in Africa or in Indonesia
Wow.
and then go to places. And sometimes I just wasn't jiving with the vibe. And I was like, okay, something is telling me I have to leave this place like
Wow.
now. And then I would leave, which I don't know what would happen, what would have happened if I, had I stayed there. But nowadays, if I have to go somewhere and I have to be in a place where the vibe is not so good, I try to be the thermostat in the room rather than the thermometer,
Hmm.
meaning setting the temperatures, resetting the vibe, and leaving it better than I found it, rather than being the thermometer and just kind of reading the temperature and adapting myself and lowering my vibe, if that makes sense.
Wow. Wow. Thermostat versus thermometer. Very interesting. How do you do that if you feel, wow, so you felt this negative energy in a place and you just had to leave it because it was overwhelming. If you feel it coming from a particular individual, I'm thinking of the movie Minority Report, where you know they went into the future and they stopped crimes from happening in the future. But uh, I just don't know what that feeling is like. If I knew somebody was going to do something harmful to themselves or somebody else, and I just felt that energy, I don't know what I would do.
Mm, yes. I don't know that I've ever been in a place where I felt like an imminent crime was going to happen or
I
somebody
see.
was going to harm themselves.
Okay.
But there were studies that were made with meditation where groups of people went to meditate. I think in a park in New York City. I think it was like Central Park or something like that. And they meditated several weeks for I think an entire summer or something, and they recorded the crime rate
Hmm.
in that city over the time where people were meditating and increasing good vibration and the crime rate. Oh gosh, I wish I had the statistics on top of my head,
Wow.
but it was something like a significant reduction, like 20 or 25% reduction in crime rate in that during that period of time. And so we do have the ability to impact other people's vibes. And it comes from our intention and I feel our self mastery. Because if we embark in the fear, we're not contributing to the solution. And one example of that is when the pandemic started. I remember, I mean, I'm very much a fact checker and science, but I'm very spiritual and I'm open to energies and all that. So when the pandemic started, I mean, I had my own uncertainties. My husband is American, I'm Canadian. Back in that time, we were not married, and the border was closed
Mm.
indefinitely. We were 4 months without seeing each other, so that was a lot of uncertainty and anxiety and all that. And I remember looking at all the things that are so-called conspiracy theories, whatever. But I mean, I was looking at the information that was available, and I noticed that it was lowering my vibe because it
Wow.
was making me anxious. It was making me angry. And I thought to myself, whoa, 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 whoa. No, no, no. My job, okay, there might be some abuse of power. There might be some dodgy stuff happening in the world. Whatever. It won't be the first time nor the last time. But my job here is not to lower my vibe, to be in that field and blah, blah. No, my job is to keep my vibe high so that I can inspire people to also come out of fear, come out of duality, us versus them, which is what creates war, and it never
Yes.
worked and it will never work. So that I can inspire people to come back to peace within themselves, with them, with each other, so that we may find a path to the solution. So it doesn't help anybody for me to lower my vibe. So that's when I made the switch, and I stopped looking at all the news, and I stopped looking at all the information that, oh, sign this petition and this and that. I was like, no, um, I'm not doing the world any favor by embarking into that. So I guess if I was to go into a situation where somebody was imminently committing a crime or harming themselves, um, the thing that I would have the most mastery over is my own vibe, and bring in with pure love and pure intention, and inspire the person to get in there. So it's like my husband and I are watching Star Wars, because I hadn't, believe it or not, I had never watched the whole thing.
What?
No, I know. And the last episode was Luke believing so much in his father's ability to love again, that he was able to break through the dark force, and his father was able to remember who he is and to come back to love. And I have this saying that love always wins. Love always wins. And at the end of this episode, my husband looks at me and says, "Love always wins." And I'm like, yes.
Spoiler alert.
So
Yeah.
it's like a Pygmalion effect. If you expect somebody to behave a certain way, you're sending out that vibration, that expectation. It's in the subtle, non-said things, but the person can feel it. So that's what I would do in a situation like that.
Yeah, very interesting. And you made a point about the news and wherever you fall on the political spectrum. Unfortunately, negative anger sells, and when people get angry, they keep watching, and that's their goal. Is their goal to get you angry so you'll keep watching, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
I remember in my cousins in Italy on my father's side in the 90s, there was it was an earthquake. I forget when it happened. It was a terrible earthquake. But I remember all my family over there saying that morning, the dogs, the chickens, the cats were all going crazy. The dogs wouldn't stop barking. The chickens were like jumping and twirling. They all knew it was coming.
Yeah. They
All
could
the animals,
sense it.
they could all sense it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Which, we are from the animal kingdom.
Yes.
And somehow we've gotten a little bit numb in our senses, which, to come back to hypersensitive people, like we were talking earlier, that perhaps we've kept this ability to sense things and to rely on our senses for impending danger, or, for whatever is happening. Yeah. You made a great point with the anger, that one of the objective is to keep you watching, because when
Yes.
you're angry, you're activated.
Right.
And negative emotion can be very addictive, which is why people can get stuck
Yeah.
in the negative emotion. It can be fear, it can be sadness, it can be worry, it can be anger,
Yeah.
guilt, shame. And why it can be addictive is because when you're feeling a flood of emotions, well, one, you're alive, but it is pumping some of the reward centers for just feeling those emotions. So you're probably familiar with Joe Dispenza and his work.
Certainly.
Yeah. So he says, you got to break the habit of being yourself,
Yeah.
because every time you relive a negative emotion, that's your body being in the past, reliving an emotion, because you're reliving some meaning related to that. And when people tell me, oh, I want to be happy, I want to be peaceful, I want to be joyful, some of the things that we're working on is to break the addiction of the negative emotion, and to actually make the addiction to the good feeling. It's like when you're breaking the addiction to sugar or alcohol or cigarette. I think people have a difficult concept with this, because they're like, oh, I'm going to be deprived of my only source of pleasure, my only source of relaxation or joy. But I tell them, I said, no, why don't we replace that with something that you're craving to feel so good. You're craving to feel that joy, to feel that energy in your body, to feel that mental clarity, that self-confidence. And that'll make it that the substance will naturally go away. You will naturally not think about it anymore because it's like you've linked your reward systems with something that gets you to the goal that what you want instead of getting you the same sabotage behaviors and patterns that you no
Mm,
longer want, but that you've been addicted to. So the brain and the mind is a fascinating place to be.
mm, hmm. Is it more difficult to love or hate?
That's a great question, Joe. That is a great question. And what comes to mind, you know, that tale of this indigenous kid who goes to his grandfather and he says, you know, the grandfather says to his kid, his grandkid, there's a white wolf and there's a black wolf, you know, and white wolf is your bright, luminous self, which we could associate with love, and the black wolf is the negative, the shadow, which we could associate it with hate. And so the grandson says, well, which one is going to live? And the grandfather says, well, it's the one you're going to feed.
Hmm,
I think that in the world that we are living today,
hmm,
a lot of people have been disillusioned and hurt by love, and they are holding themselves back from loving because they're afraid of being hurt again. So, in that sense, it might be easier to hate
hmm.
because when we hate, when
Can't be
somebody
disappointed.
hates, you can't be disappointed, and it's never about you. It's always, oh, it's the other person who's like this and like that and like this and like that. So it keeps the responsibility outside of yourself, and you keep being protected. But then that creates a society where people feel very lonely, even though we're the most technologically connected society that we've ever
Hmm,
been, but we've created a society of loneliness. um, you know, in a neighborhood, people, you know, they barely know their next door neighbor, which, by the way, not having this connection of the clan, you know, like when we were living, let's say, in caves or in villages, having the protection of the clan was very protective for states of anxiety and depression because people felt supported, they felt protected. If they needed something, you know, the somebody else would be able to help them, and they would be, you know, together. And in today's society where consumerism has really isolated people, of like, oh, not in my backyard.
hmm,
So when people are feeling isolated, they no longer have this protection of the clan, which lowers the threshold of the alarm for anxiety and depression, but anxiety especially. So when people are anxious, it's harder to love, and it might be easier to
hmm.
hate because they're in that activated, stressful moment. So I think if we were to create more cohesion, more unity within our populations, it might be easier to love again. But to do that, we have to create more cohesion within ourselves and reharmonize the dualities that we are carrying within ourselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a mouthful, Catherine. I agree. And with obesity and people overweight up to 75% in this country, in the United States right now, I mean, health, physical health has everything to do with mental health. So if there's already
Yes.
anxiety there with overweight and you're not treating your physical self, how can you treat the mental self well as well, correct?
Correct. Yes. And um, I remember the first few days on the job of being a nurse, and that's back in 2004. I remember thinking, wow, one of the greatest mistakes of medicine has been to separate the mind and the body
Hmm.
because they don't go one without the other. There's a reason why we say mind over body. We don't say body over mind. So with the example of overweight, with, of course, you know, fast food, which is, it's food like substances, it's not food, it's
Right.
not real food. The high paced performance, anxiety. So when our bodies are
Hmm.
stressed, when we activate the stress response, the natural mechanism in the body is to slow down metabolism,
Hmm.
because the body is like, uh-oh, we're going into fourth world war here. I don't know when it's going to be, but we got to pack our reserves. So when we're stressed, you know, we release a lot of cortisol, and cortisol will pack fat where? On the belly, around the hips, on the butt, make you lose some muscle weakness. And so even a medium amount of stress, when it's sustained in the long term, which is what we're seeing today, um, will have that kind of effect. And then when you're stressed, you're anxious, you want to calm your nervous system. What's the one of the most efficient way to do that? Eat carbs.
Mhm.
Eat foods that are comfort foods. Eat bread and pasta and donuts and biscuits and cookies and all of these things, because what happens is when you eat these things, um, it will make your gut secretes serotonin, which is serotonin is the feel good neurotransmitter in the brain. So, you know, the gut will secrete that just to make your food move forward
Hmm.
into the tube. But, in the side benefit of that is the serotonin travels through the vagus nerve, through the heart. So
Hmm.
it'll calm your nervous system, come to your brain and feel good. And so it's a natural stress reliever. But then the next minute, the person will feel guilty because they know that what they just ate was nasty for their body. It was full of calories, no nutrients. And then they know they're going to gain more weight. And now they feel guilty and they're reactivating the stress response. And so that's like a vicious circle that happens. And so the overweight epidemic has been driven by many different factors, which is
Hmm.
physical, yes, environmental, yes, a lot mental, and relationships. Um, you must be aware of the study that's been done by Harvard, which is the longest study ever done uh, scientifically. It's the happiness study. And there's a TED talk about this, and they're up to their fifth study director because it's been going on for like 75 years.
Wow.
And they've studied that what makes the biggest impact on your quality of life, on your happiness, um, is, I mean, out of all the parameters that could be, the number one thing is the quality of your relationships. And so we know that relationships are one of the biggest cause of stressors for people, and yet it's one of the biggest cause of happiness and longevity.
Hmm.
So somewhere in the mix, we have to address relationships and how we relate with each other, which is a mirror reflection of how we relate with ourselves.
Hmm.
So a lot of the stress is being conducted by relationship issues where, wouldn't you agree, Joe, that it would make so much sense that we would be taught as kids how to relate with others in ways that are constructive and not take things personal, not assume all kinds of stuff, not make all kinds of meanings, and gain that self confidence from early on.
Yeah, not to be
Because,
easily offended. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It'd make a
So,
world of difference. Yeah,
man, yes.
it really would.
I know.
Catherine, how did you beat Lyme's disease?
Oh, yes. So that was a biggie for me.
Yeah.
I In 2016, I started to have all kinds of weird symptoms in all different kind of systems. I couldn't digest anything anymore. I had like a swollen belly. I had brain fog, difficulties concentrating, searching my words. I was tired. I mean, in between patients, I had to nap on my examination table. It
Wow.
was like really bad. I was losing hair, lost weight. I had pain everywhere that was migrating. I had heart palpitations, intermittent sweats and chills. I was frozen, even though it was like the middle of a summer.
Whoa.
It was really bad. And I really went on a quest to find what that was. And it took me 8 months to find out the diagnosis. And even though I was working in the medical field as a nurse practitioner, I soon realized that the answers were not in the medical field. And I found the diagnosis myself.
Hmm.
And through just extensive research, this thing was eating me up from the inside. I remember my doctor saying, "Catherine, you're just too stressed." And I said to her, I said, "Yes, stress plays a role, But no, in 36 years of living in this body, I had never felt like something was eating me up from the inside. I was dying. So I went into like extensive research of functional medicine, especially. All and I don't know, one thing led to the other, and then I found that it was Lyme, and I was like, holy crap, if it
Wow.
took me this long and I'm a healthcare professional, imagine all the people
Mm.
out there who are living with chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, which a lot of medical hypotheses are saying it's Lyme disease that's untreated,
Mm.
um, anxiety, depression, all these kinds of symptoms that are ruining their life, and medical professional cannot find what they have, and they're stuck, you know. So I was very fortunate that I was not intimidated by doctors who were telling me, oh, it's just stress. I was like, no, okay, rolling my sleeve here, I'm going to find this. And I just studied everything that I could, all of the Lyme experts, and I pulled the best out of every modality. So I built this extensive protocol of herbal medicine supplements that have evidence on it, because
Mm.
I'm a scientist. So I needed evidence that things were working. And with natural supplements, it's very rare that you have research that's done um, to prove, their mechanism of action. But I found some of them, and I included that in my protocol, quality products, and then changed my diet. And I made some radical changes in my life, most of which had to do with how I was managing my emotions. That's when I came across my hypersensitive personality. I was like, oh, okay, that's what's going on.
Mm.
I had to let go of toxic relationships. And I remember at the time, um, I knew kind of a year in advance that the intimate relationship that I was in was no longer suiting me. It was not a bad person, an amazing person, just misaligned. And so I knew this was coming. And then I knew that I had to quit my nurse practitioner job because I was no longer aligned with the medical paradigm. And I remember
Mm.
hearing this guidance from my soul and going like, okay, one divorce at a time here,
Mm.
please.
Mm.
But I really did all of the things for the physical body with the protocol, the diet, but also I did a lot of emotional healing. That's when I was learning to be a master NLP practitioner and health coach. So the benefit of learning these things is when you learn these, you practice on people, but you also get practiced on. So you get the clients. So you work on your own stuff.
Mm.
And I realized I had so much emotional healing to do from the past, subconscious stuff. And that's how I was able to accelerate my healing by going into my own energy leaks, my own patterns of perfectionism, and, you know, saying yes when my heart was saying no, stop being a people pleaser, stop putting other people's needs first, kind of bring it back to me. Um, Stop doing things that are not aligned with my vibe. So it was a lot of life reconstruction,
Wow.
and to stop living the life that other people wanted me to live so I could live my life. And I have to say that when I started on my protocol, it was a really radical shift. But the most radical shift towards healing was when I submitted my, when I quit my nurse practitioner job. Within 2 weeks of that, I had a quantum leap in healing. And I was like,
Wow.
oh, this was holding me back. Even though it took me 4 months to make that decision, 4 months of arguing with my soul. My soul was saying, you got to quit that job. And I was like, what? I've studied so hard for this. I've got patients. I've got amazing colleagues. My soul was like, yeah, you got to quit that job. And I was like, so I argued for 4 months with my soul. But the moment I submit my letter of resignation, whoa, it's like a whole world opened to me.
Mm.
So yeah, it was a combination of things. And I stopped counting at $75,000 what it cost me to regain my health
Wow.
from Lyme disease. But honestly, if I had to redo it all over again, I would redo it. I would redo the whole thing, except I would probably save 50,000 out of that with the
Mm.
knowledge that I have now.
Is this when you started hang gliding?
No, I was already a hang glider pilot. I started in 2006.
That's it.
And yeah, I think hang gliding really helped with my healing, because
Mm,
in the darkest of times, when I had to go to bed after like 5 minutes of stationary bike. And Joe, I've been an active person all of my life. I'm a sportsy person, and
yeah,
hang gliding requires muscles. You muscle this thing around.
sure.
But in the darkest moment of Lyme, where I was lying in bed feeling so weak and so uncertain, I was envisioning myself, on the mountain, on launch, with my glider on my shoulders, feeling the wind on my face, feeling the glider in the wind, feeling my strength and my determination to just launch that thing. And with neurosciences now, Joe Dispenza has talked a lot about this, is the brain doesn't make a difference between a situation that you are currently encountering or a situation that you're imagining in your mind. But when you're imagining with your senses these things, you're going to signal your genes to activate the expression of the production of good cells. So all of this visualization and being there with my senses, on top of the emotional healing and the protocol and the diet changes and the life makeover, is, I find, what really got me out of chronic Lyme in ways that are unheard of. I'm on a lot of forums and I see a lot of people struggling for years and years and years, and they don't see the end of the tunnel. And I've been helping people since 2017, with Lyme, and I really help them recover their life, their health, without losing their time or their money. Because now I shortcut things. I bring all of these modalities and I bring them into this, and it's just, last week was between New Year's and Christmas and New Year's, and some of my Lyme clients were sending me pictures of, um, where they are, and they were like, "Thank you so much. I feel so much better. I can't believe how quickly this is turning around, and thanks to you, and I'm so grateful." And I was just like, "Wow, this is the best Christmas gift."
Mm.
you know? Yeah.
Now, are you
Yeah.
convinced your protocol can help anyone with Lyme?
Yes.
Wow.
The Not only the protocol. So sometimes people want just a protocol. I tell them, you know what? Yes, the protocol will help you, but what will help you the most is to join. It's to combine the protocol with the neuroscience-based coaching, the emotional, what I call the emotional alchemy, the emotional healing, because that's really where everything is going to, synergetically exponentiate each other. Each modality will exponentiate each other. Totally. And this protocol will not only help people with Lyme, but, Joe, this was fascinating. When I entered remission from Lyme, I was reading this book called Radical Remission. Don't know if you ever heard about it.
No.
It's on, people with cancer, oftentimes terminal cancer, who went a different route than conventional medicine, and they experienced a radical remission. Tumor was there, tumor is no longer there,
Right.
and somebody went and studied these people for about 10 years, and she came up with 10, um, key factors that all of these radical remissioners did to experience a radical remission from cancer. And cancer is really a dysregulation of the immune system, which Lyme disease is also a dysregulation of the immune system because it's so attacked with different infections. I call Lyme cancer of the soul also because it's a life crisis. Anyways, I was reading this book. It was April 2018, and going through this book and going like, oh my goodness, all of these factors, that's exactly what I've done to heal from Lyme. Even the chapter on herbal supplements, except for the antimicrobials for Lyme that are in my protocol, all of the rest, all of the other supplements to support different organs like, mitochondria and adrenals and, modulate the immune system and detox, all of these supplements were in there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did all of this without knowing. And it was very validating to read that. So I think this protocol can help much more than people with Lyme, for sure. If we take the antimicrobials apart. Yeah.
Very interesting. So why are I mean the medical community would love to have this protocol. Why not make this available to everyone? Your protocol.
Yes. Well, I have an online course where I teach the protocol.
Ah,
And one of the things I realized when I was a nurse practitioner is that to just tell people, take this, take that, do this, do that, doesn't work.
Mm.
If it had to work, it would have worked a long time ago, right? Like you can see the failure of this model of just being, take this, da, da, da. Most people want to understand why they would take something and the importance and the mechanism of action. And I remember, even as a nurse practitioner, I would explain to them quickly what, probiotics do and what prebiotics do and how it strengthens their immune system. And they'd have like these big eyes of like, wow, tell me more. So in a way, the protocol is not something that I would make available just like a regular prescription. It's important for people to understand what each ingredient does. And I don't sell any of the products. I don't have any conflict of interest. The products that I'm listing are those that have research on it. They're high quality. I've taken them myself and my clients have taken them myself, and there's proof of efficacy. But people have to understand why they're taking it, what the ingredient does. And that's one of the things I love to do, is to teach complex stuff into simple ways
Mm.
that people can understand and it makes sense to them. Because when it makes sense, right, like when you hear about, let's say, a food, a superfood that has properties, then it makes sense to you and you want to eat it, even if sometimes the taste is a little bit, weird, but you're like, oh, it's good for me. So that's kind of my approach with that protocol. Yeah.
I think it was Einstein who said, if you can't explain it to a 12-year-old, then you don't understand it.
Wow, yes. Exactly.
Do you consider yourself a disciplined person?
Well, yes. Sometimes I'd like to be more
Mm.
disciplined, but I'm realizing that throughout my life I've had many instances of discipline. One of which, I mean, just any studies, my bachelor in nursing science, my master's degree as a nurse practitioner. Heck, when I learned to hang glide, my teacher, I'm a tiny woman. I'm 5'7", 125 pounds. So when I learned to hang glide, my teacher didn't have a small enough glider for me. So I had this big truck glider that I had to, go up a training hill that's 100 foot high and back this thing up in the wind. And oh my goodness, but I so wanted to do it.
Mm.
And it was so hard and I was so sore afterwards, but I so wanted to do it. And, it's been 15 years of successful safe hang gliding. So I would say hang gliding is one of the biggest discipline that every time I go for a flight, I have to inspect my glider. Even if I've seen it the day before, I
Mm.
inspect to make sure every um, screw is in place, that everything is functioning properly, and to go through a set ritual that has to be repeated consistently. Because in aviation, you cannot let go of your attention and your vigilance. You cannot be complacent because it'll kill you
Yeah.
or injure you. So, and now I'm doing a PhD, doctorate in natural medicine on top of a Siddha Veda practitioner course, on top of running a business. So I've had to ramp up my own discipline of when I do meditation and my exercise and sleep and eating well and not staying up too late, even though it's Christmas time. So I think I do have a fair amount of discipline in my life.
It would certainly seem so. And how can how do you think the public can use discipline to have more love? To feed that white wolf.
Oh, what a great question. You know, anything is a question of habit.
Mm.
And the habits are the things that we do on a consistent basis, on a daily basis, that will determine our quality of life. And I would say that the discipline, which is something that I do that myself, is a discipline of nurturing self love,
Mm.
loving myself first, which is the way of nourishing the white wolf. Because I cannot pretend to love somebody if I hate myself. I'm very cautious when somebody displays a lot of self hatred behaviors, but yet tells me that they love me, because I know that they haven't loved themselves first. And loving yourself is a daily habit that requires discipline, whether it's to give yourself the good foods. You got to love yourself enough to eat the good food and to do the exercise and to do the meditation. I like to do a lot of mantra and affirmations. I am lovable. I am a person of value. Um, I mean, I've got these affirmations that I've printed on pages, and I keep that by my bedside. So in the morning when I get up and I do some stretches, I read these things. I
Hmm.
am healthy. I am vibrant. I can't wait to provide, to contribute of my gift into the world. And so these affirmations, like Joe Dispenza says, neurons that fire together wire together. Meaning, if you've been practicing a certain habit for a certain amount of times, these neurons of habits are kind of tightly coiled. So if you want to change from the black wolf to the white wolf, you gotta just go into that direction, and soon these neurons from the black wolf will kind of disconnect themselves to reconnect with the neurons of the white wolf, and that'll become your habit.
Hmm.
I find that there's a lot of subconscious processes that go with self-love, which is some of the amazing work in transformational coaching that I do, which is to go into the supramental, the subconscious, and reprogramming literally the subconscious so that it becomes a lot easier to maintain this habit in the white wolf. Otherwise, when there's still shadow in the subconscious mind, it's out of your consciousness, it's out of your control. So it'll, yes, you can maintain a certain habit, but you'll see a person or situation might happen in your life, you'll get triggered, and boom, you'll get back here because it's your subconscious programming to be here.
Hmm.
So I think that's the discipline also of being willing to look at the shadows and to reprogram those subconscious beliefs so that it's much easier to nurture the white wolf on a daily basis.
Fascinating. Once you start loving yourself, you can love others.
Yeah.
Take a moment to breathe that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you measure success, Catherine?
Oh, that's an amazing question that I've been asking myself for 2022. It's like, well, I want a successful business. I want this, I want that. But ultimately, I find that success is a moment to moment state of presence and awareness that brings me into a state of joy. It brings me into a state of peak flow, and peak performance. But that's a moment to moment thing. So sometimes we wait for the big success to celebrate, like, woohoo, I've made this amount of money, or I've conquered this, or whatever it is. But I find that success is really all of the present moment choices that you make. You choose to nurture that white wolf over the black wolf in that moment, and that's a victory. Oh, somebody came to you with something, you choose to not take it personal and see that it was their own stuff. Success keeps you present, aware, in the joy and in the flow state. That to me is the definition of success.
And it's ever more difficult. We mentioned social media before, and people they're in restaurants, yet their heads are still down in their cell phone. They're not being present. It's so difficult for some at this point, yet so simple. Turn off your phone. Just
Yes.
make eye contact.
Connect with people.
Yes, connect with people.
Yes. And connect with yourself, because a lot of this, phone thing or busyness is a way of disconnecting ourselves from ourselves.
Mm.
So I find that adopting a practice of meditation, which again takes discipline, is a great way to reconnect with ourselves on a daily basis. Because you can scan, you're doing a meditation and you're feeling, oh, I'm feeling this jittery, or there's this emotion, and then you gain awareness on your internal world, because there's so much happening on the outside. Our brain receives more sensory output information in a day than our ancestors did in a year 100 years ago.
Wow.
So it's a lot for us to process. So if we don't learn to shut the outside world down and to go inside, of course we're going to be frazzled and stressed and anxious and not being able to connect with each other. So turn it off and go inside. Reconnect with yourself is, I find, um, an antidote to
Yes.
some of today's frazzleness.
My next point was the common thread I see among great people like yourself, interesting people, is meditation.
Mhm.
Everyone meditates. It
Yes,
just kind of calms the mind. I started doing it too, and it really, really helps.
it does. It's amazing. I'm studying right now a course on biofeedback in my PhD program, and they're saying just across the board, anything that will bring you back in coherence, brain, heart, breathing coherence will help. But meditation is like top of the top. And the doctor who founded Quantum University has been a long-term meditator, and he's invented not invented, but he's put together what he's calling pro consciousness meditation with crystals at different points and different um, ways of measuring the effects on the body, kind of reversing the energy field, which you might have seen a picture of that with kind of this torus um, shape around the
Oh,
heart. Anyways, so it's very, very interesting. And yes, I've seen people overcome a lot of anxiety, um, eating disorders, insomnia. I mean, the list, it goes on and on and on with meditation. I mean, cardiovascular issues, hypertension, pain. It's amazing. And basically, it's shutting down the outside world to go within yourself. And it's so simple, but I think,
it's simple.
yeah,
It's free.
yeah,
Anybody could do it at 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and it just does a world of good.
absolutely. Yes.
Well, Catherine Gagnon, thank you so much for your time today. This was such a pleasure. I really enjoyed talking to you. I found it fascinating, so I hope others will. In fact, I know they will. How can we get in touch with you? Please tell us.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Joe. I've had so much fun in this conversation with you, and thank you for having me on your show. So, if people want to get in touch with me, they can go to my website, which is www.Catherine Gagnon. So, it's my name, CATHERNEGAGNON.ca. Or if they want to write to me, they can write to my email, which is inspiration at my name, catherinegagnon.ca. And then I'll be able to respond.
Very good. I'll put that in the show notes as well, and it'll have it all there. Catherine, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. I hope one day we get to sit and have a cup of coffee. Perhaps you and your husband and my girlfriend and I. Will be a great
That
time.
would be awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Joe, and this fascinating interview. Can't wait to hear it, what your audience has to say.
Very good. Thank you so much. Be well. Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.